I never expected her to remember my name, let alone everything else. It was a Thursday, one of those washed-out afternoons when the sky couldn't decide if it wanted to rain. I'd stopped by the small coffee shop near the train station, the one that always smelled faintly like cinnamon and damp wood. I came there most days after class, half out of habit, half because I didn't really have anywhere else to be. She was behind the counter that day. Mrs. Tanaka, my friend's mom. She'd started helping out here a few weeks ago. I'd known her face since high school, in that distant, respectful way you know adults who only existed in doorways or behind car windows. When she saw me, she tilted her head, trying to place the memory. Then she smiled, slow and almost amused. Coffee with 1 sugar, right? It startled me that she remembered. I nodded. Yeah, you've got a good memory. I try to. She handed me the cup. You always sit by the window. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just gave a small laugh, the kind people use when they don't know whether they've been caught doing something private. The shop was nearly empty. The clock ticked above the pastry case. A song hummed softly through bad speakers. She wiped down the counter even though it was already clean. Every now and then, she'd glance at me, and I'd look away just a little too late. I pretended to check my phone. There were no new messages. There rarely were. She leaned her elbow on the counter, her tone casual. You still see Rika much? Not really, I said. He moved cities after graduation. We talk sometimes, I guess. That sounds about right for boys, she said with a half smile. I folded the napkin beside my cup, smoothed it flat, then folded it again, smaller this time. She noticed. You've always done that, she said. Even when you came over to study. You'd fold the edge of your notebook while you listened. I looked up. She was watching me closely, like she wasn't sure if she should have said it. The air between us shifted, just slightly, like someone had opened a door and let weather in. I didn't know you noticed that, I said quietly. I noticed small things, she replied. We didn't speak for a while after that. She went back to wiping the counter. I stared at the street outside, where people were moving fast under umbrellas, their faces blurred by the rain-streaked glass. When I finished my coffee, I stood, unsure if I should say goodbye. She was tying her apron behind her waist, the fabric tugging slightly at her wrist. She turned when she felt my eyes on her. Same time tomorrow? She asked. It wasn't really a question, but it felt like one. Maybe, I said, though we both knew I would. I left the cup on the table and stepped into the drizzle. My phone buzzed as I pulled up my hood. A message from an unknown number. Promise you'll never tell him. No name. Just that. I stopped walking, thumb hovering over the screen. The rain started harder, pooling against the curb, making the letters blur slightly under the reflection of the streetlight. Somewhere behind me, the coffee shop door opened, and I thought I heard her voice call my name. Or maybe it was just the bell above the door, ringing once, and then nothing but the sound of rain. The next afternoon, I went back. I told myself it was because of the weather again, another gray sky, another excuse for warmth. But when I walked into the coffee shop and saw her tying her hair up, I knew it wasn't the rain I was there for. She looked up as if she'd been waiting. Same window. Yeah, I said, trying to sound casual. It's habit now. She poured my coffee without asking for my order. Her hands moved carefully, precise, like the act itself mattered. I noticed she'd removed her ring. There was a faint tan line where it used to be. When she handed me the cup, her fingers brushed mine, not intentionally, not fully, but enough to make me forget the sentence I was about to say. She leaned on the counter, quiet for a while. You know, she said finally, this used to be the kind of weather Rico hated. He'd sit in the car and refuse to go to school if it rained. I smiled. Yeah, I remember. He used to pretend he was sick. He wasn't pretending. She paused, wiping at an invisible stain. He just didn't like goodbyes, even small ones. Something in her voice softened, like she wasn't talking about her son anymore. I wanted to ask what she meant, but the words felt too heavy. Instead, I said, I didn't know you worked here now. I don't, really, she said, smiling faintly. The owner's a friend. I help out a few days a week. Keeps me busy. Busy's good, I said. Not always. She looked at me then, really looked. There was no polite distance this time. Just an unspoken recognition of two people who'd found themselves in a quiet in-between. I sat down at my usual spot, pretending to study the raindrops racing down the glass. I could feel her eyes on me occasionally, and every time, I found a new reason not to turn around. When she finally joined me at the table, she brought her own cup of tea. "You don't mind if I sit?" "No. Please." We talked about small things, the shop, Riku, a book she'd found under his old bed. But under every sentence was the same unsaid question: what are we doing? The clock ticked above us. A spoon clinked against porcelain. The world outside moved faster than we did. At one point, she laughed softly at something I said, not because it was funny, but because it was true. I looked up then, and she was already looking back, her smile fading as if she'd realized too late how close we were sitting. I noticed her hand resting on the table, near mine. I didn't reach for it, but I didn't move away either. When she stood to leave, she hesitated, then gently fixed the collar of my jacket. A small, ordinary gesture, but I felt it long after she walked out. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. It changed after that day. Not in a way anyone would notice. Not at first. She started pouring my coffee before I even ordered, and I started staying a little longer, pretending to read something on my phone while she closed up. It wasn't planned. It just happened. One evening, she was wiping down the tables, the sound of the cloth dragging against wood the only thing breaking the silence. The rain outside had turned heavier, blurring the streetlights into soft halos. She looked tired, not from work, but from holding herself together. "You don't have to stay," she said without looking at me. "I know," I said. "I just don't feel like going home yet." She nodded, still cleaning, slower now. "You live alone?" "Yeah." "That's brave." I laughed under my breath. "Or just quiet." Something flickered across her face then. Understanding, maybe. She set the cloth aside and leaned against the counter, arms crossed, like she needed a barrier between us. "You remind me of him," she said softly. "Before he got older. Before he stopped talking to me." "Riku." She nodded. "He used to tell me everything. Then one day, nothing." Her voice cracked just slightly on that last word. I wanted to say something, that maybe she hadn't done anything wrong, that sons just grow away, but the words stayed behind my teeth. "Instead," I said, "he always spoke well of you." She looked up sharply. "Did he?" "Yeah. He said you always knew when something was wrong." She smiled, faint and uneven. "Guess I missed a few signs." The shop door opened then, a small chime that made us both jump. A man in a gray coat stepped in, ordered a coffee to go, glanced between us. I could feel the air tighten, something unsaid coiling up in her throat. When the man left, she exhaled slowly, almost a sigh. "You should probably go before people start to notice." "People?" I asked, trying to sound casual, failing. "Rika's friends. Anyone. It's a small neighborhood." She said it with a kind of softness that hurt more than any accusation. Like she was already stepping back, making space. I nodded, but didn't move. "I don't want to make things complicated." "You already are," she said, not unkindly. She turned off the lights one by one until only the glow from the window remained. Her face was half shadow, half reflection. "I shouldn't have texted you," she whispered. Her eyes flicked toward me, waiting. I stood, heart pounding too loudly in the still room. "You don't have to explain," I said. But I think she wanted to. Or maybe she wanted me to stop her. For a second, one trembling, unguarded second, we both leaned forward. Not enough to call it a kiss. Just enough to feel the pull. Then she turned away, pretending to check the door lock. "I'll see you tomorrow," she said. But her voice didn't sound like a promise. The coffee shop closed early that night. Power outage in the next block. She texted me, "Don't come today. Lights are out." I went anyway. The rain had finally stopped, the air still carrying that clean, washed scent of wet concrete. The shop was dark except for the dim light from the fridge case. She was sitting by the window, coat still on, a cup of tea steaming in her hands. When she saw me through the glass, she didn't wave, didn't smile. Just watched as I pushed the door open. I said, "Not today," she murmured. "I know." Silence. The kind that felt like walking a tightrope. I sat across from her, the chair scraping too loud against the floor. "Did something happen?" She shrugged, eyes on the steam rising from her cup. "I saw Rika today." He came by the house. Asked about you. My chest tightened. What did you tell him? That I hadn't seen you lately. Her voice cracked a little. She covered it with a sip of tea. For a while, we just listened to the hum of the fridge. Somewhere outside, a car splashed through a puddle. Then she said, almost to herself, I don't know what we're doing. The words hit harder than they should have. I looked at her, really looked. The faint lines near her eyes, the weariness that came from years of being careful. She wasn't playing with me. She was fighting herself. Nothing's happening, I said. Exactly. She set down her cup, the porcelain clinking softly. And yet it feels like something is. Her hand brushed her hair back, but it trembled. I can't stop thinking about you, she said finally. It's stupid. You're just. She stopped herself, looked down, shook her head. I'm just Riku's friend. I finished for her. She nodded once, as if that settled something. But it didn't. I leaned back, tried to laugh it off. You know, he'd probably just make fun of me if he knew. Her eyes flicked up. Promise you'll never tell him. It wasn't a threat, it was a plea. We sat there in that faint refrigerator light, two people trying to pretend the air between them wasn't vibrating. She looked away first. You should go home. I don't want to. I know. The street outside had gone quiet, just the occasional passing car. She stood, pulling her coat tighter. You think this means something, don't you? I swallowed. Doesn't it? Her breath caught. A small, helpless sound. For a moment, she looked like she might answer. The space between us felt thinner than air. Then she turned, reaching for her keys. Let's not make this harder than it already is. I hesitated, wanting to say something that would stop her, anything, but the words wouldn't form. When she looked back, her eyes were wet but steady. Why did you really come tonight? She asked. And I didn't have an answer. She stopped coming to the shop. No message this time, no reason. One morning she was just gone. Someone else worked the counter, a younger woman with earbuds in, who didn't know my name or how I took my coffee. For a week, I kept showing up anyway. Sat in the same seat, ordered the same drink, stared at the same rain. The cup grew cold before I finished half of it. I told myself it didn't matter. That maybe she'd quit, or gotten sick, or gone on a trip. But every reason I made up sounded like a lie. Then, one evening, I saw her across the street. She was with a man, older, grayer, wearing the kind of clothes people only wear when they want to look like they're doing fine. He was talking. She was smiling, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. They stood close, too close, like a photo that should have stayed in a drawer. I almost crossed the street, but something in me froze. Watching her laugh, politely, almost nervously, felt like being erased in real time. Like she'd decided to rewrite everything we hadn't said. I turned back before she could notice me. That night, I typed out a message. Did I do something wrong? I stared at it for 10 minutes, then deleted it. The next day, Rika called. We hadn't spoken in months. Hey, man, you've been quiet lately, he said. Mom told me you stopped coming around. I froze. She said that. Yeah, said you're busy with classes. You okay? I wanted to ask what else she'd said. If she mentioned the shop, the nights, the almosts. But I just said, yeah, I'm fine. After we hung up, I sat on my bed, phone still in my hand. There was something tight in my chest. Not heartbreak exactly, but something duller. Something like being forgotten. That evening, I walked past the shop again. The light was on inside, but it wasn't her. Just the hum of the espresso machine and strangers who didn't know there was a ghost sitting by the window. I thought about knocking on her door. I even walked halfway there, my shoes wet from the puddles. Her apartment light was on, a soft glow through the curtains. I stood across the street, hands in my pockets. One more step, and I'd be at her door. One more step, and everything might change. But I didn't move. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. When I finally turned away, the air smelled like rain again. In my pocket, my phone buzzed once, a new message. From her. Please don't come by. No greeting. No explanation. Just those 4 words. I stared at them until the screen dimmed, and for the first time, I didn't reply. Was late when I finally went to her house. Not planned. I just found myself walking that way, hands shoved deep in my jacket, the air cold enough to sting. Her street was quiet, the kind that felt like everyone inside was trying not to be seen. I stopped at her gate, stared at the front light still on. For a minute, I almost turned back. But the thought of leaving things unfinished, of never knowing, felt heavier than whatever waited on the other side. She opened the door after the second knock. No surprise on her face. Just that same quiet exhaustion, like she'd been expecting this, dreading it. "Hey," I said. "Hey," she echoed. We stood there too long before she stepped aside. "Come in, then." The house smelled faintly of tea and laundry detergent. A single lamp lit the room, throwing soft shadows against the walls. She wasn't wearing makeup, just a gray sweater and hair pulled back loosely. It made her look younger. Or maybe just more real. "I shouldn't have texted you that," she said. "It was unfair." "You didn't have to," I said. "I got the message." She exhaled, rubbed her forehead. "You're still angry." "No. Just confused, maybe." She nodded slowly. The clock ticked. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. Then she said, "That man you saw? He's not. He's Rika's father. We were talking about selling the house." "Oh." The word came out small. "He wanted to move back in," she continued, voice thin. "Said it was time to stop pretending. But I've been pretending for years, and I'm tired." She sat down at the kitchen table, her hands folded together tightly. "I don't know what you thought this was," she said. "But I can't be someone's mistake again." I swallowed. It never felt like a mistake. Then what did it feel like? Her eyes met mine, searching, not for romance, but for honesty. "It felt like finally being noticed," I said. "Like someone saw me when no one else did." Something flickered in her expression. Guilt, maybe, or relief. "That's the problem," she whispered. "You should be seen by people your age. Not me." She looked down, fingers tracing the rim of her mug. I crossed a line. Maybe we both did. Silence again. It stretched until it hurt. Then I said, "So what now?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached across the table and brushed her thumb against my hand. Once, lightly, like punctuation. "Now," she said softly. "We stop before it becomes something we can't undo." I nodded, though every part of me wanted to stay. We sat there a little longer, not talking, not moving, just letting the quiet settle into something almost gentle. When I finally stood, she walked me to the door. "Take care of yourself," she said. "You too." At the threshold, she smiled, small, tired, but real. "Okay," she asked. I hesitated, then returned the smile. "Okay." It's strange how things find their way back to ordinary. The coffee shop changed owners again. The cinnamon smell's gone, replaced by something sharper, new paint or ambition. I still come sometimes, out of habit. I sit by the same window, order black coffee. No sugar now. It's been almost a year. We didn't see each other for months after that night. No texts, no chance encounters. Just distance doing what it does best, erasing the edges of something that used to hum quietly between two people. Then one morning, I saw her again. Same street, same gray sky. She was carrying groceries, hair tucked into a scarf. She looked different, lighter somehow. When she noticed me, she stopped, half smiled, like she was deciding whether to walk away or stay. She stayed. We ended up on the same bench near the station, the one that always caught the late morning sun. "Still take your coffee with one sugar?" she asked. I shook my head. "Grew out of it." "Guess I did too," she said, holding up a thermos. "Tea now. Less complicated." We sat quietly for a while, watching people rush past. The city had its own rhythm. Trains, footsteps, the hum of things continuing whether we noticed or not. "I moved," she said after a bit. "Smaller place. Feels more like mine." "That's good." "You're working now?" "Yeah. Design firm downtown. Nothing big." She nodded. "Riku said he saw you at the station last week." I smiled faintly. "You still talk to him about me?" "Sometimes," she said. "Not like before. But sometimes." There was no tension now, no rules to break. Just two people who'd walked through something private and survived it without bitterness. When the train passed, the gust of air lifted a few strands of her hair. Without thinking, I reached out and tucked them back behind her ear. She didn't pull away. "Old habits," I said. She laughed quietly. "Some are worth keeping." The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It felt lived in, like a pause that didn't need filling. She poured some tea from her thermos into the lid and handed it to me. Still hot. I took a sip. Too sweet. Still can't get it right, she said. We both smiled at that. A small, shared joke that didn't need context. When she stood to leave, she touched my arm lightly. You look happy. I think I am. She nodded, satisfied. Good. That's all I ever wanted. I watched her walk away, slow and certain, the sun catching the edge of her scarf. I don't think what we had was a mistake anymore. Maybe it was just a brief season, something that arrived quietly, changed the weather inside us, and then passed. Still, every time I pour my morning coffee, black, no sugar, I find myself smiling without knowing why. It's the small things that stay, the soft ones, the ones no one else would ever understand.